Hello, and welcome to the third in a series of 4 podcasts produced by Public Health Scotland and Suicide Prevention Scotland, exploring ways in which people working closely with difficult issues and topics can help keep themselves and colleagues safe and well. There are so many ways in which staff in these types of jobs are exposed to upsetting information that can feel overwhelming. With these podcasts, we'll hopefully give you the information you need to look after yourselves and the people around you, to learn how to spend some time on nurturing and caring for yourself, and the things you can do to maintain your well-being and thrive in your role. My name is Janet Watson. I'm a counsellor, writer and former journalist, and I've worked closely with client trauma as well as experiencing it myself. I've always been interested in what makes people tick and have recently come to understand the importance of being my own client and keeping a weather eye on my own mental health. Exposure to difficult information, data and discussions in our work lives can become very normal, but it can chip away at our resilience if we let it. At the start of the preceding episodes, I've suggested that you kick back for the duration of this podcast, relax, and try to put aside the needs of others while you take some time out for yourself. Often we're so busy helping others that we forget about ourselves and our own needs. We go to the back of the queue. Well, for the next few minutes, I'm once again saying that the roots of coping with difficult work and avoiding stress and burnout lie in 2 little words: you first. In the first 2 episodes, we learned how we can be alert to the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma in ourselves and others around us. And we learned how we can manage our stress levels, achieve more of a work-life balance, and put ourselves first. In this 3rd episode, we'll be looking specifically at how organisations can help and support their staff, and how management can work together with staff to develop the kinds of positive working habits we touched on in the last episode. Someone who has worked with organisations to promote staff mental health and well-being is Satinder Panesar, a psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, trainer and coach based in Glasgow. Satinder has worked in many different settings, including the third sector, the NHS, education, and now runs her own private practice. She's also recently published her book, When Therapy Goes Wrong, Learning from Challenges and Improving Practice. I'm also joined by a familiar voice from episode 2, Dr. Rebecca Williams, a former GP who now runs her own stress management business, helping individuals and companies reduce the impact of stress. In our conversation, Satinder and Rebecca share their views and experiences of how staff can be supported to prioritise their well-being, particularly when they are doing difficult work. While some workplaces might be getting it more right than others, we can draw on our own experiences to support ourselves at work when we recognise that things are feeling difficult. Hopefully, you can take some of the issues touched on in this episode into your place of work and make suggestions about positive changes to support you and your peers' well-being. I think, Satinder and Rebecca, it's becoming very apparent now that health and safety at work is not just about trailing wires and being able to find the nearest fire exit. It's very important that organisations and managers are tuned in to the emotional well-being of the workforce.
Absolutely. It's a really good point you make there, Janet, because it's not always about operational physicalities of rooms, spaces. It's very much part of emotional, psychological well-being. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than health and safety.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. People are a full collection of mental, physical and emotional health. And yes, we have to see about physical safety, but our mental health and emotional health is a very important part of who we are and is very easily affected by the workplace and other things going on in our lives.
Absolutely. So how can organisations then support their staff? And how have you both worked with organisations to help them meet staff needs in terms of feeling stressed or overwhelmed? And do you have any top tips for managers of teams working on difficult, emotive topics? Suicide prevention, for example. What would you suggest?
Well, there's a few things. Maybe if I could just start by saying something about providing psychological safety. Because that's quite key, isn't it? It's to have some kind of culture where it's absolutely safe to speak up, ask for help, and to admit when things are wrong, not wrong, but hard, or when things are emotionally tasking. So there's something about that psychological safety environment that would be really good to have a culture of.
It's a really interesting thing, that, isn't it? Psychological safety. Because I know I've felt very vulnerable sometimes at work, but not felt able to talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, vulnerability in the workplace, it's not something that necessarily is a welcome thing.
Not always. And I guess it's not only the responsibility of the managers, because we don't want to always put all the responsibility on managers. It's the responsibility of teams as well, in how teams support each other.
I think that's really important. And also there's an element of responsibility for the individuals. A big part of what I do with companies is actually education of staff, because yes, there's a lot of pressure on employers to create a culture that's supportive and safe for well-being. But individuals need to be self-aware and understand what stress and struggles mean for them, and then be empowered to make changes to reduce the impact, which is important for them and for the workplace. So I run webinars and workshops for businesses, which can either be for the whole team or can be for discrete teams within the business, which is a good opportunity for bonding. It's wonderful watching the discussions that the teams are having, but it's also a good opportunity for learning and for increasing self-awareness, as well as learning tools to help manage self-care and sort of psychological well-being.
I was thinking, how do you create that psychological safety? I mean, how do we do that? How do managers do that? How do teams do that?
I think it's very much what you say, Rebecca, about the psychoeducation around what that looks like. So I would say individuals need to have an understanding of what it means, not just what it means from a very, from the head psychological point of view, but very much from an emotional point of view. So I think what you're saying, Rebecca, about that educating and people understanding is really, really important. And that's what creates an environment. There's so many different personalities in teams, isn't there? And there's an understanding of who a manager would have an understanding of each personality, but it's not always necessary that each team member has an understanding of personalities. So it's a bit of a collaborative approach, I would say, and a bit of an understanding.
I think you're right. And actually, even for managers, sometimes they may not understand their team very well. I have come across, I suspect you have, many managers who have not received training on managing staff and who can feel quite threatened and who are not tuned in. And even when we think about remote and hybrid working, when people are not working together, they can put on their I'm okay persona in a Teams meeting, but actually behind the scenes might really be struggling. And that's therefore even more important that managers find ways to keep in touch with their team members, to maybe have one-to-ones. But of course, if their workload is heavy, they may not have the time to do that with their staff. But so, as you said, Satinder, it's about understanding different personalities within the team. It's about not feeling threatened by other people within the team, so you can be real with them and not, well, sometimes when people feel threatened, it brings out behaviours which are not healthy for the team. And it's about supporting the managers in supporting their team members. I had a situation once where I was giving a webinar, and one of the questions at the end was, we're a team that have tight deadlines, but the trouble is it means everybody in the team is stressed at the same time, and that stress can feed itself. And they were asking for advice on that. And I can just run through a few of the things I suggested. One was that they have a meeting with a cup of tea every morning online, just to reconnect as people, an opportunity to say, well, look, I'm struggling with this. Can anyone else help me? Because people have individual strengths out with work and in work. And also, if you receive an email from a team member that is not really written very nicely, that makes you feel hurt, upset, or angry, do not respond straight away. Use your ground, walk away.
Take a beat.
Do your grounding tools, your breathing, and your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which I've talked about in the previous podcast. And when you're calmer, come back to the screen and respond rationally and kindly, because often the manner of that email says more about the person sending it than it does the person receiving it.
I guess just to follow on around some of the work that I do, Janet, is providing, and now I'm going to use the term reflective practice, but I'm aware reflective practice means different things to different organisations. You know, the term reflective practice is so vast.
Yeah.
But I guess some of the work that I do is provide reflective practice one-to-one, but also groups. Now, the key in this provision is that managers aren't part of the group with the team.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key things. And don't get me wrong, I've worked where managers have been part of the team and it hasn't worked particularly well.
No.
Because you can imagine team members don't want to open up. And that's not a reflection on maybe relationships. It's just a reflection on the feeling of comfortableness of individuals. And what this space provides, it's usually just sometimes six members of a group. And what this space provides is that opportunity just to be. You know, it's creating that space to be heard. And we can't underestimate what that space can look like. To be heard, to be listened to, and then to have a group reflection where there's group learning, because we all learn from each other in a group situation.
Absolutely,
So that's been a really useful interaction that's worked really well. And I'm always in awe of organisations that bring an external member or an external person to work with their teams. That just fills me with joy, because I think it's good practice. And I'm really aware of resources and financial issues around organisations providing this. But if we want to look longer term, if we want to look at the well-being of both team members and managers, reflective practice, and I use that term broadly, is usually is absolutely a way forward.
The way to go.
And then what happens is sometimes it's groups of team members, but sometimes it can be a group of managers. And sometimes it could be a group of team members and then just a manager, a one-to-one. So it's a variety of different ways that I've supported individuals in a team.
I think your point there is so helpful about people, organisations bringing in external facilitators to sit in a group of people and just really listen to them. And I've done that in both a training capacity and in my role as a counsellor. And it's fascinating what comes into the room and the emotions that come into the room, and that people feel safe enough to really turn up as they are in their lives, no matter what's going on, and just talk about it. And one organisation that was working with serious disease and illness, and every week they were being sent an email, a round-robin email, giving the names of everybody who had died that week of that illness, who they'd all worked with. And they said, seeing that every week, week in, week out, it was just an automatic thing, out it came. But seeing that absolutely devastated them, but none of them were realising this because it was the thing that happened. So bringing that to that meeting meant that stopped. The email stopped, and that was what was needed. But it wouldn't have been heard had they not got everybody together in the room to talk about it.
Yes, because I think the other thing is people often think they're the only one struggling with something. And when they come into a room with others, I've had people say, gosh, it's such a relief to realise I'm not the only one who's struggling. And as you say, it can be very beneficial to have someone there who's external, because like the two of you, I've been in that situation as well. And people do feel safer to speak out. And then one person speaks out and then others are able to join in and just voice things.
And just to pick on the point that you said about people having that email and the impact that has, I guess it's recognising that not only, when individuals are working on a one-to-one frontline, there's the impact, but I guess it's bringing in the whole, what are individuals consuming?
Exactly.
The data that they're producing, the reports that they're writing. It's like, and that gets forgotten about, doesn't it? It gets forgotten about what the consumption is like there, because reading traumatic things, we're still absorbing it, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we talked about in the first episode of the podcast. how as human beings we empathize.
Yeah.
And all we have to do to trigger that empathic response is to read something or see something, see somebody's expression, read somebody's story, and we are right there with them. So yes, it's absolutely important. I think vital that this is understood, the impact these things can have on staff.
And it's really important to give them an outlet to express that impact, isn't it? Because I think otherwise people find ways to learn to cope with it. And that can sometimes just involve shutting down emotionally. And then you lose not only the ability to feel the sadness and the difficult emotions, but you lose the ability to feel positive emotions, which is stifling for people.
Today we're talking about the things that organisations and managers can do to support the well-being of their staff. We asked some of our suicide prevention colleagues to share some of the things that their workplace does that they think really helps.
There's a lot of things, to be honest. We've got daily check-ins, we've got weekly check-ins, and we also get time to go to the gym as well, so just take that time out every week to do it.
We do all different stuff, and one of them, oddly enough, pushes your boundaries, and it's each year. We have like a pop-up panto, and then we do that at Christmas time for the community, and it is so much fun. And it being a man that worked in construction for 30 years, it's a big change for putting some makeup on and singing and dancing on a stage. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things.
I think it's a really, really amazing place to work, and I was chatting to our director of operations yesterday about one particular thing. So we've just increased our standard paternity leave to 6 weeks full pay, and we do a whole load of things, but this is one thing that really stood out to me as someone who I've got 3 kids, but when my first little lad was born, he was in the neonatal unit for about 2 weeks, and it actually meant that I didn't have any time at home with my wife and my son when he was born, and that had a huge impact on my well-being, my family's well-being. So yeah, that's one thing that I'm really proud of that we're doing as a charity for dads, and actually not just for dads, for families.
Thinking back to my old career as a journalist and some of the things that I used to cover and my colleagues used to cover, and we would turn up back at the office and we would just get on with our work and our day, and then we'd go home. But there was more of a sense of collective responsibility because we would all talk to each other afterwards. We'd go out afterwards. We would probably drink way too much afterwards, and it's a good thing that doesn't happen anymore. But it was a sort of, I don't know, an informal collective debrief, and it did work. But I think the opportunities for that kind of thing in the workplace now are becoming perhaps fewer than they used to be. I don't know, what do you both think?
Now I'm just thinking about office and remote working, because I think in an office scenario, if you have a coffee break, people can meet and chat. There's the opportunity for spontaneous chat about what people might be doing and what they've been thinking about. And remote working, that is one of my concerns, that when people are working from home, I know it has many advantages for many people, I do get that. But from a well-being perspective, I think it can be disadvantageous. People have structured meetings, they put on their happy face during that meeting, back-to-back meetings, and people can have no idea what's going on behind the scenes for somebody. Also, there's often a blurring of home and work life. It's too easy to go back into your study or even to sit down at the dining room table, your computer's there, so you don't have a fixed finishing time from work. So that's often a concern. And some people do feel quite lonely working from home. And also the sense of team can get lost, and I think managers have to work very hard as to try and incorporate that team. But I do remember when I worked as a GP, there's the practice I worked at, I loved the fact that coffee time was sacrosanct with the GPs. So even if you finished your surgery late, we'd all communicate when we were all ready, we'd all go through for our drink, and there you would have a chance to talk about a difficult situation you'd had in the surgery. And it was so therapeutic and so important, I think, for our mental health.
Absolutely.
We underestimate debriefing, don't we? We really underestimate it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
It's and maybe take it for granted when we used to all work in offices with colleagues. But it's certainly, like you're saying, Rebecca, it's lost now, isn't it? With the isolation and sort of hybrid working and remote working, it's different now.
Yeah. And also that point about, we turn up and we're on the screen and we're being our best self for 45 minutes, an hour, putting on the happy face. And I think when I did used to be in an office with other people, I would immediately spill what was going on for me to my friend at work. We'd have a coffee, we'd have some, the water cooler moment. I don't think that happens anymore. And people would know what was going on for me. So there was that kind of unspoken holding that perhaps isn't there so much now.
And of course, we can turn off a camera now, can't we? Because if we don't feel up to it, or we can just say, oh, I'm feeling a bit, I've got a bit of a cold, can I just turn off my camera? And that's, it's almost like it's accepted, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure what, how the impact of that as well.
Yeah.
But we need to think about what businesses can do to overcome these issues, don't we? And I think therefore hybrid working is definitely better than just pure remote working. And if people are working remotely, they really need to tune into the potential disadvantages and maybe have more opportunities to check in on people. But yes, it is very much about thinking about ways to create team, to create belonging, and to help people feel very much a part of the business and to feel that they are valued, appreciated, and people care if they're struggling, and to have a point of contact. And one more thing I will just say is I know people have mental health first aiders, and I think they offer a very important thing, but they are a reaction to a situation. And I believe really more importantly is preventing and being proactive, and that is about doing what you can as a business to support well-being, and also educating, as I've mentioned, having facilitators in or other people in, like the three of us, to organise groups, and also offering one-to-one support for individuals who are struggling. You might help avoid them going off work with stress and struggles, or you might be able to bring them back sooner. So I think it's important for businesses to approach these issues in a proactive way.
I'd just like to make a point around, what managers can do. And one of the things I've often thought about is how are managers modelling to their teams?
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about modelling like time efficiency and organisational and structure. We're talking about even modelling vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really, for listeners to be really interested in, to look at themselves and say, how do I model vulnerability?
Yeah.
And am I comfortable modelling vulnerability?
Yeah.
And what does that look like for me? So there's a bit of a reflection for anybody listening, any managers listening.
How to be vulnerable, how to be yourself. And to be okay with that.
And to be okay.
And it's about being vulnerable without appearing too needy, because otherwise people feel I can't cope with your troubles. I've got enough of my own. So it's being vulnerable but being strong as well at the same time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And also modelling a healthy way of working and living. So you're not working all hours, you are leaving at the right time, and because people will pick up on that.
And having a lunch break.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even popping outside for 5 minutes to get sun on your face.
On a final point, I just wanted to say, I read somewhere that one of the most important things for staff is to get positive feedback and to see how what they have done over the past few days or weeks has impacted the organisation in a positive way. And that feels to me to be a very simple thing that managers can do, but perhaps one that in the stress of the moment is often overlooked. Yeah.
Positive feedback, I think, is absolutely essential at all levels within a business. We are hardwired to look for problems, to focus on problems. We need to make every effort to look at what we're grateful for, to be grateful to our staff, to say what they've done well. That gives them confidence and helps them fulfill their potential. And it's good. And it's good to give that feedback. It helps you feel good to give someone else positive feedback.
Yeah.
You've just made me reflect on one-to-one line management sessions, when you're going through KPIs.
Awful.
And wouldn't it be great just to have, a section in there, how are you feeling? And actually what's worked really well this month, or what's been, have you had any positive feedback? So that's maybe something to incorporate into these one-to-one sessions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a good point on which to end. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank my guests in today's podcast, Satinder and Rebecca, for taking the time to share their experiences to help us all learn and better understand the impact of the work we do and how we can be kind to and look after ourselves. Finally, just take a few minutes to pause and reflect. Think about, and maybe even write down in a notebook or just make a voice note to yourself, which friends or colleagues can I be open, vulnerable with, and talk with to improve my well-being? In meetings or just work chats, Which colleagues help me to feel uplifted and energized? And do any leave me feeling unheard or drained? Self-awareness is again key to looking after ourselves and others when we're doing emotional, challenging work. What feels supportive and helpful at work? As we've learned during this and the last couple of episodes, self-awareness and reflection are key to staying well in a job that exposes us to distressing information. But what about when our own experience has included the kinds of trauma that we're exposed to at work on a day-to-day basis? Maybe it's our own lived experiences or those of people in our family or community which has led us to do the difficult work that we do. What about when we can't turn away from hearing or reading about another person's traumatic lived experience, even though it triggers very difficult personal memories and feelings in ourselves? In the fourth and final episode in the You First series, we'll be looking at how we can cope when work is not just work. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this podcast from Public Health Scotland and Suicide Prevention Scotland. Views or statements shared do not imply formal endorsement or promotion of any specific approach, service, or model. The guests in this episode have shared insight from their practice and experiences. This podcast is not intended to provide clinical guidance or professional advice.